You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
He said that every gym has its own heartbeat, that nobody in the gym is more valuable than anybody else. 5 gyms apart, that's just, I mean, you learn to do that by degree. Over 40% of our membership had bar muscle ups. That's across, multiple locations. I think there's value in gymnastics. I feel like it's like the forgotten pillar. If CrossFit is supposed to be strength, gymnastics, and conditioning, I feel like it's the one that people shy away from the most. It's the ultimate offshoot of that you really, really want to develop, in my opinion, for this to be successful, is a culture of participation. It is so hard to teach a teenager how to deadlift that's never done it before. Their bodies just don't move right. I still run Anywhere Fit trips once a year. There's 10 days, and that's like international. We go far, far away, and we basically work out like that the whole time. This is Blair Morrison, and you're listening to Airey Bros Radio.
Been CrossFitters for, I guess we got into it before we got our level 1, but you were an inspiration because of the CrossFit Anywhere, and you were doing a lot of stuff outside, and I believe there was even once you had a video maybe of working out at Red Rocks.
Yeah, that's right, man.
Yeah, and so I recently got back into teaching high school, and then most recently got into teaching physical education. So we got back into kind of the brand X and following CrossFit a little bit more in depth, and following Savon. Savon had you on, and it was kind of like a blast from the past as someone who had inspired us a long, long time ago. And with the power of the podcast and that, we figured we'd reach out to see if we could get you on and talk about all that you got going on and all that good stuff.
Yeah, no, man, I appreciate it. And that's pretty cool. You remember that Red Rocks video. That was a long time ago, but I remember bear crawling down the stairs in there with my little cousin. We were out there for a wedding, so that was a good time.
Yeah, we lived in Denver for about 4.5 years or so, and so we're very familiar with Red Rocks and all the exercising that goes on there in the summertime for sure. So it's an honor and a pleasure to have you on, and we'll pick your brain a little bit here.
Appreciate it.
So Blair, something that I did find out, I'll probably reference that Savon podcast a couple times because it was a really good interview and really insightful. But you said on that show that you went to Princeton and played football there. Rich and I are originally from New Jersey, and one question we like to ask people who are from New Jersey or spend time is it pork roll or Taylor ham?
Pork roll.
Yes.
All right.
That's awesome.
So Blair, one thing that you brought to my attention, Rich and I have coached at numerous CrossFit gyms, and we really never took it into consideration as far as opening up a CrossFit is when you're opening up a CrossFit, you need to kind of be aware of your radius and the amount of CrossFits in that area, amount of people who live in that area, and maybe think about, maybe I should buy a CrossFit or, see if I can take over a CrossFit opposed to opening one up. And I know you talked about, having 5 gyms, had one close on you. That was something that came to your thought process in opening up gyms. What was that kind of that aha moment when you figured that out? Was that just kind of trial and error, having to close a gym and realizing that there's more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to opening up a CrossFit gym?
Yeah, I think so. I think when I opened that second gym, it was my second location. Like all of or at least I thought I had checked all the boxes that were going to make it successful. Facility was nice. The location was nice. You had the affluent area around you. There wasn't like a bunch of visibility, but it felt like it was enough. And it was fine. Like that gym did okay, but it didn't thrive the way my first gym had. And the main reason was there was multiple other CrossFit gyms in that same area that were just kind of dividing the pie, and if you stuck it out long enough, maybe they could close first and could kind of consolidate, but it just wasn't a big enough demographic to support multiple gyms. So I learned that then, and in general, when I started looking at my market, Sacramento area as a whole, there were just a lot of affiliates. There's a lot. There were like at one point there were over 50 affiliates for a metro area of just about 2 million. And you just do simple math. I mean, it's not that many people do CrossFit yet, which is I wish it changes. I'm banking on that it does. And I think that the new leadership is kind of they're kind of tipping their hand that they really want that to happen. You know, their goals are 30 million people doing CrossFit in the next by 2030, which is ambitious considering the number now is somewhere around 5 million, we think, worldwide. So that's a 6x growth curve in the next 6 years. But the fact that they're saying those things leads me to believe there's going to be some growth, even if it doesn't hit those numbers. And you know, if you're looking at opening a gym and you already have, and say your town's 1 million people and you already got 30 plus gyms dividing it up, until that growth happens, it's going to be a struggle. And one thing CrossFit does well, regardless of who owns the gym, is it bonds people to each other, right? The workouts form community. It's one of the best things about it. So ripping people away from a gym they've already committed to for years is tough. And I think that strategically it's better to try to take that community that's already been created and maybe improve upon it, or find an owner who's, you know, maybe their heart's not in it anymore. You know, they're in a different stage of life. It's not the same business it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago when they got into it. There's a lot of people like that. So if you're ambitious and you want to have a CrossFit gym in a community and you look around, it's like already saturated, you know, look at one of those opportunities and see if it's there. If it is, it might be an easier way to start.
You bring up the growth and how the management wants to change things going forward and get that number to 30 million CrossFitters. Being someone who's had a gym, I believe, since 2011, what has been some of the changes that you've seen? Has there been times prior to 2020 where you didn't think the name was necessary, after 2020 where you thought it wasn't necessary, or just having that name is part of what's bringing people to the table? What have you seen since you've been an owner of a CrossFit change?
I mean, I opened in 2011, and that was right on the heels of me being in the games for 3 years. So I never felt like I had as much momentum as I did then, right? CrossFit is a pretty small community. It's a digital community, so people are paying attention to what's going on at the CrossFit games and things like that, even if they're not attending. And I still think that's the case. I would say that the digital consciousness of the average CrossFitter is high. People are on Instagram. They're following the top athletes. They're following the top brands. But what is still what remains unchanged is the like public consciousness of CrossFit, the uninitiated consciousness, people that have already made up their minds that CrossFit is not for them. They're not, those people are, that's the target. I think that's the target for management, is to try to start changing minds. And Greg did that in kind of like a more confrontational, like screw you if you don't like it type of way, which a lot of CrossFitters respect. You know, we're not going to like water it down, or we're not going to stand for it if, you know, the NSCA is going to put up faulty claims. You know, we're going to challenge them in court. But where that fell short, and I think this is a frustration for a lot of affiliate owners during Greg's tenure, was that that's not a really effective bedside manner to the majority of the population who thinks CrossFit is scary and going to get them hurt. If you're just telling them, hey, this is the best thing, whether you like it or not, and screw you if you don't want to join us, they're not going to join us, you know? And that makes it tough to grow your gym. It makes it tough to grow the community that supports your gym. So my hope is that, and what I've been kind of led to believe is that the new strategy towards kind of bringing more people into the fold is going to be more subtle. You're going to try to reach out to people that are influential, that are already initiated, already doing CrossFit, but maybe aren't calling it CrossFit, and try to get them to come all the way around and be like, yo, this shit works. It's awesome. The people are great. It's not going to get you hurt if you do it right. And so if you can get a couple of those influential people on board and you start seeing it, the digital community obviously grows really, really fast. And so you get more people looking up the word CrossFit on Google. We'll all see that. And I think it'll be a more valuable trademark than it's been in the past.
So you mentioned community a handful of times, and that's been the driving force that always calls me back into CrossFit. This is one thing that drew me into it. Reminded us way back in the day of being at wrestling practice. We had a really good first CrossFit coach, and it just got us up out of bed every morning at 4 to go to the gym. And I'm curious, what is the landscape of your community like, and what sort of things have worked best, and maybe what sort of things haven't really worked to kind of promote and build that community within your gyms?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it evolves, right? We go through different kind of eras of a gym or a business. But I mean, having a consistent brand ethos is important, and it's really tough when you start a business because most people are excited about what the logo is going to be, right? And like what the name's going to be, and making sure it's the right name and it looks good, and like that's fun, but it really isn't worth anything unless the product behind it is deliverable, day after day. And I think a couple of things that we tried to do from the beginning was to not take fitness too seriously. So our color scheme is tie-dye, and that goes back to when I was the first year I competed, 2009. I showed up, and that was during the era when everything was very serious. It was like Forged and Affliction. It was like MMA transported into fitness. And it just felt like, I don't know, like not that guys weren't tough and they were trying to be tough, but it's like everybody was taking it a little too seriously. Like this is working out, we're exercising, like let's be competitive, but let's also have fun. And remember that at the end of the day, nobody is, at war here. Nobody is like trying to knock somebody out here. So I tried to build that into our community. So early on, we did a lot of goofy stuff. Like we did costume wads once a month, and I would, give away a month membership. We did 5-minute freestyle dance warm-ups where like you're forcing people to like do the most uncomfortable thing, the most awkward thing they could do. But it just gets them to relax a little bit and realize that nobody here is judging them for anything. So, I mean, over the years, we don't do a lot of that stuff anymore, but over the years, it's just like that sort of tone, I think, permeates the culture of your gym or your affiliate. And that has to be administered from the top down. So I believe in that. I believe in that nobody in the gym is more valuable than anybody else, regardless of how good they are or how tough they are or what their job is. So I try to treat everybody the same. And I think our coaching staff takes that cue and they pass it on, and all the members pass it on. And what you get over time is an atmosphere that is comfortable, and people feel comfortable coming into it. And it's the ultimate offshoot of that you really, really want to develop, in my opinion, for this to be successful, is a culture of participation. You want people to be willing to not only show up and do their workout, but you want them to be willing to show up outside of the gym at people's birthday parties, at competitions, at community service events. You want the gym to be like a hub, but it should like kind of infiltrate other areas of their life and their friend circles. And that's what truly kind of binds them together. right? That's what makes your community strong. Is it's not just the workout, it's your commitment to the people in other areas. And so it's tough to do that. You have to really earn people's trust and like get them to like each other. And in order to do that, you have to get their guard down. And, the way I chose to do that was to try to by kind of making it fun and goofy and not taking it too seriously while still delivering, a professional product.
Yeah, I love that. Jimmy and I always joke and say back in my day, we used to wear board shorts and Vans to work out.
Right. Yeah, you guys know.
I'm curious, is there cross pollination between all of your gyms, or is it, 5 separate communities? Or when you have those sort of outside the box or outside the gym events, is there cross pollination between all your communities?
Yeah, I mean the goal is to have cross pollination. It depends on the event. We run the Northern California Classic every year, and it's a big regional event, and we get big cross pollination there. That's like something that's big enough that we can get people from all the locations to come out and help, to judge, to volunteer, to participate and compete. But you can't force that. You provide the opportunities and you hope that it happens. Every gym. I remember I talked to Tommy Hackenbrook a long time ago, and he said that every gym has its own heartbeat, and I think that's true, and that's okay. Like we each of our gyms does not feel the same. I mean, the membership is, the membership is more similar than I think a lot of people want to admit. And we have like our one gym in Folsom is, it's like maybe 20 miles from downtown Sacramento, and the demographics are different, right? You got homeowners versus mostly people that are renting. You've got younger demographic downtown, older demographic in Folsom. But like I coach people both communities every week, and I'm like, y'all are pretty similar. You think you're different, but you're not. And people from one won't drive downtown because they're scared of not finding a parking spot. And people downtown won't drive out to Rockland or Folsom because they think it's like the yuppie suburbs. And I'm like, you guys are essentially the same. But anyways, that being said, there is character that is different at every place. And if you try to force that to be the same, you're going to end up killing it. So I try not to do that. We do the same workouts across, and you see, every day we post the workout, the whiteboard results from all the gyms on a collective Facebook group, so everybody can see each other and they start to recognize the names. So that kind of breaks down a little bit of the barriers, and people get to know each other, and it can compare times and things like that. And then when we do have big events like Christmas parties or community service things where everybody gets to come together, they can meet and mingle, and then hopefully realize that they aren't that different, and those types of actions become more common. And it happened just not too long ago. There was 2 girls from our Rockland gym teamed up with a girl from a Folsom gym and a girl from the downtown gym, and none of them had ever competed before, but like they got together and they loved each other. Now I see them all the time on Instagram. They're like hanging out, doing stuff with spouses, and so that's awesome. So, but it can't be forced. And I think just the idea, if the culture is there, like, hey, we encourage everybody to participate and do these things and show up, then I think it happens more organically.
With the name being CrossFit Anywhere, and kind of how we got pulled into following you, was that anywhere, hey, I'll bring a kettlebell to the playground and get down. And that was what always kept it fun for us and always brought us back to our roots of just, hey, let's get a workout in and let's not get too scientific about that. There is a time and place for all that as well, if you want to get gains and all that stuff. But do you keep that anywhere part of it? Do you guys have 1 or 2 days a week where you're getting outside and doing some anywhere stuff?
Dude, I wish we did more. But it's honestly the bigger the community gets, the harder it is to maintain that. So I still run Anywhere Fit trips once a year. There's 10 days, and that's like international. We go far away, and we basically work out like that the whole time. and it's amazing. It's like my favorite time of the year every year. But during the rest of the time, there was a time where I was doing like one Saturday a month, and we would pick a location, and anybody that wanted to come, not just our gym, anybody would come, would show up, and we go like to a parking garage and like run the stairs and do buddy carries and things like that. But it hasn't been as common, and I wish we did it more, but it's honestly, it's mostly my limitation, like stuff with the kids and the weekends. It just doesn't line up as like something that's, feasible, or I just can't make it regular, and then in your mind, psychologically, like, oh, well, if I can't make it regular, it's not worth doing. And I should just like say, screw it, find a free weekend and get it rolling again. But we try to program some of that stuff in, every week. I program the gym one week at a time. So we don't do any like long-term cycles or progressions or percentages. Every week is its own independent balanced puzzle. And I try to put like things like that, like sandbags or farmer's carries, things that are outside the walls of the gym. I try to do that once a week. Doesn't always happen, but I guess that's my compromise.
So you bring up programming 1 week at a time. What does that look like? What do you base that off of? And is every gym the same?
Yes. So every gym is the same. And what I do on Sundays is I'll sit down and I used to call it like a cornerstone method, where you come up creatively with one workout that you really, really want to do. And let's say you put that on Monday. Then the next day, it makes the next day easier, because then you're basically balancing Tuesday off of Monday, right? You don't want to do the same movements again. Preferably, you don't want to do the same time domain again. And the loading stimulus, right? If it was light one day, you're probably going to go heavier the next day. Or maybe if it was heavier, maybe you have no weight at all the next day. So that leads you to Tuesday, and then Wednesday, it's like balanced off of the previous two. And it just kind of shrinks the menu of possible variables as you go. And then there's other things you were in there, like trying to get a partner workout in, or trying to get something that's like I said before, like anywhere style outside. So that's how I do it. A long time ago, I used to program out months in advance. And the reason I went away from that was, first of all, nobody shows up every single day, or very, very few people. So if they miss a percentage like 1 week or 2 weeks in a row, and they show up and the percentage is wrong, they're screwed. Now it's like they're in this position where they need to go to back it off, or they're going to go too heavy and they're not going to see the results. Second reason was weather. You can't predict the weather 1 week in advance, let alone a month in advance or 2 months in advance. So if you have a program that's going to be including outdoor elements like running, which we definitely include, it's really difficult to know what day 6 weeks from now you should be running. Whereas if you do it on Sunday, I can look at the 10-day forecast and I can know, okay, that's a good day to be outside. Third thing is, you kind of get a feel from your membership after a week of training, or in the middle of a week of training, that should inform you as to what they want to see coming the next week, or maybe what they ought to see. Like if all of a sudden you're watching the members and everybody just like sucks at overhead squats. Dang, man, we have not been overhead squatting enough. Like we should put that in as a skill session, on Tuesday next week, and kind of like get back to it. It gives you the flexibility to do that. So in general, like I don't mind the creative process. I really like coming up with those weeks at a time. So I think most programmers think it's less work. If I program scientifically out for a month or 2 months, I get it all done and I don't have to worry about it again for another 2 months. But for me, I don't mind that. I like doing it. It's like an hour, maybe an hour and a half of time to do on a Sunday. And for all those other reasons I listed, I think it's just a little more flexible, nimble, I think you can just do a better job if you do it 1 week at a time, if you don't mind doing it that often.
So you following more of like your traditional methodology where you're not necessarily doing a black box style where you have a skill or a strength built into every day? Is it more like we warm up, we work out, and then maybe cool down? Is that kind of how you're going these days?
No, we do a skill every day. So we
Okay.
do a warm up, a skill, and a workout. And one thing that, at least in our area, that differentiates us programming wise a lot is the gymnastics. We have spring flooring in every gym.
Oh wow.
So we have an area where people can get upside down and they can fall. So we do that a lot more than most places do. And I don't know when I decided to do that, and I don't know why nobody else is doing it, but I mean, I think there's value in gymnastics. I feel like it's like the forgotten pillar. If CrossFit is supposed to be strength, gymnastics, and conditioning, I feel like it's the one that people shy away from the most. And I get that because of the difficulty and the risk, but I feel like when people get their first muscle up, it's the best feeling they've ever had. Like they're so accomplished, or when they climb the rope for the first time. So that's something that I try to lean on a lot. So we'll do a warm up, and then we'll do a skill that is sometimes a strength or sometimes a gymnastics movement. And very commonly it'll be, ring muscle up progressions, 10 minutes practice. And the coach picks a version, if it's going to be a turnover drill or a ring swing drill, and they'll drill it. And they just get more touches, they get more reps in the skill, they get less afraid of it. And then what do you know, you practice something long enough and we get a lot of people get it. I remember a couple years ago, I did it was an open workout that had bar muscle ups in it. And across the gyms, I just took pictures of the whiteboard and I tallied up how many people had ring muscle ups. So they were able to do the open workout as prescribed. And it was like over 40% of our membership had bar muscle ups. That's across, multiple locations. And that's high. I was like super proud of that. And all it is a result of, just doing it more often, right? Like taking away a 5x5 back squat 1 week and doing bar muscle up work, or strict pulling strength and stuff like that. So yeah, we follow that format, and I would say on average 3 of the 6 days those are gymnastic skills, and 3 of the 6 days it's like a more traditional strength movement.
Talk about the importance of gymnastics and being kind of like the forgotten pillar, and we've seen how much of an impact CrossFit has had on the sport of weightlifting, but it maybe necessarily hasn't had the same impact on gymnastics. But I've also heard you say on Savan that your children are in gymnastics and they will do that until they're at least 10.
That's right.
So I've had some friends that have had kids that are aspiring young athletes, and I said to them, you should put your boys in gymnastics, and I've kind of gotten some offhanded comments or maybe gotten laughed at. So I was hoping maybe you could kind of speak on why that is so important for young athletes to be involved in gymnastics.
Sure. I mean, I was not a gymnast. I wish I was, but what we see is that the body awareness and balance that people have that have done gymnastics for a period of years does not leave them. Like they just can swing on things, they can land and fall better than people that have not done it. And I'm sure there is some scientific explanation in the plasticity of the brain when you are ages 5 to 10 that I can't speak on directly, but the anecdotal evidence is that people that did gymnastics are more coordinated with their body. Doesn't mean they can catch a ball, doesn't mean they can, sprint necessarily, but when it comes to moving their body in space, like pulling up on stuff, going upside down, they're just better at it and they don't lose it. That's the part that I love, is you just don't lose that coordination. So if your goal is to have your kids become broadly athletic and capable, then I think gymnastics is one of the foundational elements. Right? It's something they can do when they're super young. It's going to make them strong. It's going to make them disciplined, and it's going to make them aware of their body. I think it prevents injuries because of the flexibility that gymnastics requires. Every day I'm watching these kids, they make them stretch first. I mean, they're doing like real flexibility stretching, not like just the 5-minute warm-ups that we do. They're really getting them stretchy. So I think that's beneficial as well. And what you said about CrossFit kind of forgetting gymnastics, I think that, or I'm sorry, not forgetting gymnastics, but not having the same impact in gymnastics, I think that's going to change. Bosman clearly sees that deficit, and he's programming towards it, and he's doing it in small incremental ways, but the ripple effects are huge. I mean, the only reason that Olympic weightlifting is as popular in CrossFit as it is today, and people, obviously it's fun to do, but the CrossFit Games made it a thing. They just made it a thing. It was always, you're always seeing clean and jerks, you're always seeing snatches, so people just do those and they get better and better and better. So if all we ever see in gymnastics is handstand push-ups, and muscle ups, that's all people are going to train it, and people are pretty good at them. CrossFitters are pretty good. Top end CrossFitters, I bet you could go toe to toe with a collegiate gymnast on like number of consecutive muscle ups. But they can't balance upside down on the rings. They can't do back tucks, and they can't do, any of the like Stalder presses, anything that's like super controlled. So I would like to see that incorporated more. Not everything has to be measured for reps and time. There's a way to incorporate gymnastics into CrossFit, I think, in a more qualitative way. Like, can you do this or can you not? And I think we'll get there, and it's going to be beneficial for all of us, that are, like I said, feeling the trickle down, because it gives us more stuff to program and to practice.
Yeah. Do your kids enjoy gymnastics, and have you seen the crossover in maybe some of their other pursuits in movement?
My daughter definitely enjoys gymnastics. My boys are younger, so I think my middle one has been doing it's like a little hybrid ninja program where they're not doing as much technical, like the disciplines where they go like beam and bar and floor and stuff like that. But he still loves it, and he's still hanging on stuff and getting flexible. My youngest one, it's hard to tell. I think he likes it, and he and my daughter are always having me hold their handstands in the house. They're like, okay, daddy, hold my handstand. So they'll kick up on me whether I'm ready or not. So I'd say probably the two of them like it the most, and my middle one is the lesser interested. But he is like by far the one that is the most competitive. So I think if he feels like he's not that good at it, he kind of starts to shy away. As far as carry over into other sports, I haven't seen much of it yet. But I see it in the gym, because they can all three climb the rope to the ceiling, and like none of the other kids their age can do it. But as far as other sports, I don't see it yet. I mean, what I have noticed for my boys is they've done soccer now for 2 years in a row, and their running is getting much, much better. And they all swim. That was another thing I said on Savon's podcast, is we're going to make them swim till they're 10 too. And their lung capacity is there, but then like incorporating just running more, obviously that's a skill in itself. And I've noticed that. The other day, my 6-year-old was at the gym, and the workout was 800-meter runs and then 5 rounds of Cindy. And it was supposed to be done, I think, 3 times. And so he would just do the runs, then watch people do the Cindy, and then he would do the runs again. And dude ran like 4 800s. Little 6-year-old in Crocs. I'm like, wow, dude, that's
Were they in
amazing.
sport mode?
Yeah, of course, always in sport mode. That was cool. And I think the gymnastics stuff, it pays dividends a little bit later when their bodies have kind of like developed and they're stronger. And then they have this kind of like foundation of ligament and tendon strength. And like I said before, the coordination and awareness, like once they have the muscles to kind of like do more things, then all of that gymnastics work, I think, will pay off.
You mentioned the swimming, and that's another thing that I add to my things I tell people to get their kids into. The one other thing, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. I say gymnastics, swimming, and then I also throw in there a martial art. So I'm curious of what your thoughts are on that, and if you had to entertain that with your kids.
Yeah. So we have been talking about getting them into like probably jujitsu or, I mean, so I like that idea too. And I think that's probably a hole in my personal fitness or upbringing. Like I never really wrestled. I never did any martial art, and I wish I had. So the only thing I worry about is the if it goes down the road of wrestling. Wrestling has a lot of like detrimental elements to it with cutting weight and the way they treat nutrition and competition. There's so much like toughness and discipline, and then just pure capability of being able to defend yourself. Like that's awesome. So I think jujitsu might be the balance there, where you can go to a place that's not gonna you're not gonna have to worry about those other things that could potentially be harmful. But I mean, to be fair, gymnastics is the same way. You do gymnastics long enough, and I mean, you see all the injuries that kids sustain in gymnastics, and the stunted growth, and I mean, we don't have to talk about the molestation and things like that go on. So it's not to say that there's anything wrong with wrestling in general, but I just know that that's an element of it. So I feel like I'm a little bit defensive on that piece, but yeah, as far as like being a third pillar, I think you're right. I think it is something that all kids should have some exposure to, and it's going to make them more adaptable and more confident. I mean, the confidence you get from being hand to hand with somebody is great. I remember that in football. I mean, I was a football player all the way through college, and one of the biggest benefits I think I had was the just peak anxiety going into a game, thinking you're not good enough physically to like handle whoever it was you were going to be. Like I was a receiver, so I'm like going against a cornerback, and I watched a film on him all week, and like, dude looks good, looks strong, looks fast, and then being out there and being able to measure up, right? Like you get your first. They always say you after your first hit, like all your nerves go away, and it's so true. So there's something about that, like hand-to-hand physical contact that I think is really good for your inner self and your confidence. And I mean, if you can get kids to do that safely, then I think it's really, really good for them.
I think you hit it right on the head with the detriments of wrestling. Me and Rich, lifelong wrestlers. I wrestled in college, and you nailed it on the head as far as the cut and weight and just the negative aspects of it. There's definitely good benefits. I don't think people talk about kind of the negative aspects of that enough. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And in the realm of programming for kids and training kids, I know you mentioned on Savant's podcast as well as you have a group of homeschool kids that come and get their PE credits through the CrossFit Kids program. And Rich, being back in PE, being a physical education teacher, I'm sure he'll have some stuff to add to this. But what are some of the things you see to kind of get kids involved in PE? Are those kids coming to that program? Do they want to be there, or are their parents kind of making them go there to get those credits? And how do you navigate through those waters?
I mean, I'm sure that most of the time the kids are being brought by their parents, in the beginning. It depends a little bit on the age. So if we're getting kids, on the younger age, 6, 7, 8, they're more willing to do whatever it is we say. And when they get a little bit older, you kind of have to earn it from them, earn their buy-in. So the way we navigate is, and this is something we do with adults also. We do warm-up games. So we'll try to start them with like, and you see this stuff all over the internet, but we'll do like pizza delivery where they have an ab mat, over their head, and they're just trying to not let it fall. And it takes like a grand total of 30 seconds for adult or kid to lose their inhibitions playing that game. It is just so great and simple. And now they're moving around and they're getting warmed up, and now like they're getting endorphins flowing and they're feeling better without even realizing why they're feeling better. So that's one little trick we use. We try to play a game as a way to get into it. And then we'll basically focus the session on teaching one thing. And that might be a squat. And it could be a goblet squat with a kettlebell, something that is teachable to a group that size. We're going to do it for 10 minutes, maybe 15. And then we're going to move them into something, again, that's more active, like a obstacle course or, something still that's kind of play-based. And after a while, that makes the kids want to come back, right? So now it's not the parents dragging them there, but they all they remember is the games. They don't really realize that we're teaching them how to squat. And so then we have fundamentals, right? We have squatting, pressing, and deadlifting. Deadlifting for the little kids is easier. The older kids, I don't know, Rich, what you see, but like it is so hard to teach a like teenager how to deadlift that's never done it before. Their bodies just don't move right. They don't understand what a neutral spine is. And so that's like extra challenging. And it just takes like just relentless consistency. And then over time, you can get it, and they adapt better than like someone who's 60, trying to teach them how to deadlift because they just don't move anymore. But I think it's critical to like make it fun so that they want to be there, and you kind of like give them a little bit of what they need, kind of in the middle. And then once you have their buy-in, then you can push it. And then they kind of like the way it feels. You get the accomplishment. Obviously CrossFit, we score everything, and that's fun. They love going up to the board and making a mark when they do a round of an AMRAP, right? That's just a little dopamine hit. Everybody gets that. So I think once we do that, then we start seeing more traditional stuff where we're doing, okay, we're gonna do burpees today in the workout. Burpees suck, but you're here, you get it now. You're kind of friends with the kids around you. And so they're more willing to kind of work hard as opposed to just play.
Yeah, they love that pizza delivery.
All right.
I did it once because I saw the Buttery Bros that did it at their little event that they had at the game. So I was like, oh, I'm doing this tomorrow. And they were like, Coach, are we going to do that again? When are we doing that again? And so I started using that kind of as a warm up or a cool down, kind of just let them play a little bit. And then
we do pizza delivery, we do handball, we do dodgeball, we do crab soccer, we do the PVC, like stand in a circle, drop it game. I mean, we do tic-tac-toe is a great one. Rock, paper, scissors war is another great one. So yeah, I mean, and I honestly, man, like I think it's important for adults to do this stuff. Like I try to program one game a week, and there are people that resist it. They're embarrassed deep down. That's why they really don't want to do it. But you just get them to play a little bit, and I mean, it just lightens them up, man. You just see them open up. It's great.
Yeah. They love the tic-tac-toe. And what I found was early on trying to do like the regimented, like running drills and things like that they would kind of scoff at it and they wouldn't. But if I put a tic-tac-toe board down at the other end of the gym and I cover it with ab mats so they can't see, and then I make them do the drills to put down the tic-tac-toe marker, they love it. I mean, I could literally have them do that for 90 minutes and they would continue to do that. The other one I do is same thing, do the running drills, but I do like musical med balls.
Yeah.
They love that too. Curious, though, as you said, the hinging it is a very difficult concept for some teenagers to grasp. So I was curious if you had any pointers or cues that you found to really work for you, because find that they, like you said, they don't know how to keep a neutral spine, and when you're coaching them to get to that neutral spine, they just continue to to do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, we need to go the other way.
Yeah. So, I mean, no, I don't have anything that's like a surefire, but having them deadlift kettlebells instead of barbells seems to help because the weight can shift further towards their center. So usually what I'll do is I'll have them start standing up. They don't even get to pick it up. And then we'll like go down like a few inches at a time. They have to hold it, hold it, hold it. And the idea that they're sitting to get the kettlebell rather than bending over to pick it up seems to help a little bit. But they're still kids that no matter what I'm saying to them or showing them, they just round and reach. They just can't. Everybody's so conscious of getting their hands to the object that they just forget about the rest of their body. So that's one thing, starting from the top down. The other thing is I try to tell them that what you're doing, you're not actually picking up the object. You're pushing the earth down with your feet. So once you're connected to it, don't think about setting it down and picking it up. Just think about leg pressing the earth. And that, I don't know, that might be a little bit too much for the kids because they really don't know what their feet and their legs feel like when they're working yet. But I've seen that work with adults, and you see the difference. All of a sudden, they're like, "Oh, I'm not really picking this thing up," and that takes their back out of it a little bit. But yeah, man, it's an enduring challenge, and I know they just outlawed smartphones in the UK for schools. I'm sure that would be a help to you, but I feel like every new kid that I see is just worse and worse. Their posture is worse, and like their attention span is worse. So, doing the Lord's work, man. Keep it up.
Thank you. Reassuring to hear that you have some of the same struggles, though.
Yeah.
Blair, we mentioned that you have 3 kids, you run 5 gyms. How do you stay sane, sir? How do you stay level? How do you make sure you're there for yourself?
Well, I mean, to me, honestly, like it sounds like a lot when you say, "Oh, you got 3 kids and 5 gyms." The 5 gyms part, that's just, I mean, you learn to do that by degree. You don't just go and start at 5. You have 1 and then 2 and then 3, and so it's not, you're incrementally adding complexity to your life. You don't just throw it all on the table. And so I think growing into it helps. It doesn't feel that different to me. I still coach about the same amount of hours. It's just spread around, and honestly, I think it's a little bit easier that way, other than the driving, because every time I go into class, it's like the one time per week that I'm going to see that person. And so I give them, it's like a challenge. Like how good can I make this hour for them? Whereas if I saw the same people every single day, you might mail it in or lose some of that. There's not as much to talk about, right? Like I just saw you yesterday, so I already know what's going on in your life. So I think there's an advantage there. And for me, I mean, I honestly, it's just an extension of my personality and who I am. Like I'm excited to be at the gym. It doesn't feel like I'm having to force myself to do it most of the time. And like, I'm not saying that I don't get burned out or I don't get tired, because I do. But that's what my family does for me. They're the balance. So when I get to see my kids and I get to coach baseball, and me and my wife get to go do things, like that's what probably keeps me sane, I guess. And like I said, I look forward to that trip every year. 10 days in Scotland or Bali or wherever, and just 30 to 40 people working out, being outside. So yeah, I mean, I think it sounds bigger than it feels to me. But I know what you're saying. It's important to keep aware of that. And anytime I do feel like it's too much of a grind, I retreat to my family.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I asked because from an outsider's perspective, you make it look easy. So won't want to see if you had any tips or tricks. But we have 4 standard questions that we ask all our guests at the end of each podcast. So the first one I got for you is, are you a coffee drinker?
I am well, let's see. It's a complicated question. So yes, I do like coffee. I never drank coffee until I had kids. And then I started drinking it because me and my wife kind of shared that. It's like a nice ritual to have before the kids were awake. And then she stopped drinking it. And I'm like, now I'm just sitting here making pots of coffee for myself, feeling like an addict. So I recently stopped drinking coffee and I'd make like a smoothie in the morning instead. So now I just have coffee every once in a while if we're traveling, but not religiously.
When you do have coffee, how do you brew it and how do you take it?
I brew it. I grind the beans, put them in the filter, and make a pot, like more of a classic pot of coffee, and I take it black.
Right on.
Is that coffee or protein you got behind you on the shelf there?
Protein.
Protein. Do you have your own protein?
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Can you purchase that online?
Yeah, so it turns out that there's only a handful of like protein manufacturers in the country, like whey protein manufacturers. So you can basically, there's these intermediaries, kind of like a screen printer, right? There's a designer. So you can basically go there and tell them what ingredients you want and what you don't. And they'll create the bags for you. And then they just slap a label on it. So we got, yeah, it's just all grass-fed whey, no artificial flavors. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Blair, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Blair Morrison?
I shave every day. So that's something I started doing, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, where it feels like you're taking the day seriously. Like you're not just like showing up, walking into it. So that's a pretty daily ritual. And I cold plunge once a week. Okay. And that makes me feel like I never want to do it. And then every time I do it, it's like it's something I'm overcoming and I feel like it's good for me. I remember I interviewed a guy a long time ago and I asked him what was the key to mental toughness. And he said, you have to carry heavy loads, long distances. You have to expose yourself to the cold and you have to change the finish line. So the cold exposure, I'm trying to check that box once a week.
Okay.
Thanks for the reminder. I'm in Florida now, but I was in Colorado and I was able to get those cold showers daily, but we really don't have cold water here in Florida. So I got to get the cold back in my life. So I appreciate the reminder.
Yeah.
What are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
I wish I was. I used to read a lot more, but I've been listening to jazz. Funny. So I get home, there's a public radio station that plays jazz after 7 o'clock every night. And so when I drive home from the gym, I'm after 7, like maybe 3 nights a week. And so like I look forward to that being on there. And I don't know anybody. I don't know any of the artists or anything like that. So it's like a different sensation, but there's like a calming thing.
Yeah. We just had a guest on last week. He mentioned Ethiopian jazz. So if you're on Spotify, you just type in Ethiopian jazz and it'll pull up a couple different playlists for you. But after he mentioned that, I was dipping into that a little bit last week while I was meal prepping and stuff.
Oh, nice. All right, I'll check that out.
Yeah. Blair, last one for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure or guilty pleasures?
Yes, I have a good one. So every year on Father's Day, our Father's Day tradition is to go to Dairy Queen. And Dairy Queen, since I was a kid, I've always loved Dairy Queen. I've always loved blizzards. And there was one summer when me and my best friend tried every Blizzard flavor on the menu at whatever the one was in Sacramento. And I decided that the best Blizzard in the world is the banana split Blizzard. So it's got bananas and strawberries and pineapple and vanilla soft serve with chocolate all blended together. And every Father's Day, me and my kids go to Dairy Queen and I get a large banana split Blizzard.
Okay, I'm gonna have to find myself a Dairy Queen down here in South Carolina, and I'm gonna get myself the Blair Morrison special.
There you go.
Do you just allow it on Father's Day nowadays, or do you sneak some other ones in there?
No, I did. We just do it on Father's Day, and what's great about it is that the kids talk about Father's Day all year long.
Oh, nice. Well played, sir.
Yeah, that's great.
That's awesome.
Blair, thank you so much for taking time out of your Friday to hop on here with the Airey Bros. We greatly appreciate it. And just to let you know, we've been fans. We'll continue to be fans. Keep on doing your thing, man. It's awesome to watch you.
All right. Appreciate that, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for the time today, Blair. Really appreciate it. Good luck with everything. When's the next trip?
We're going June 7th to Bali.
All right.
Right on.
Yeah.
And that's open to anyone, right?
Yeah, open to anyone.
All right. Might have to pencil in a trip to Bali in June there, Jim.
Yeah.
Do it.
All right, Blair. Have a great weekend.
You too, guys. See
Thank
ya.
you.